This video was sponsored by NordVPN. Hey, happy Friday. This week phone companies got really serious about making electric cars, Microsoft and Qualcomm got really serious about making handheld Android gaming devices, and Google got worried about the state of Android. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. Okay, we'll start the brief with all of the weird new things that Apple announced this week. So Apple in the middle of the week pushed out a press release saying that they have two new Apple TV models with reduced prices for $129 and $149, which is nice. And then also some new iPads, which in turn are kind of confusing at best. The iPad Pro line got the new M2 chips as well as DaVinci Resolve, which is cool, but not much else. And then the new 10th generation base iPad now also gets a better chip, a landscape camera, and finally USB Type-C. If I'm not mistaken, I think that officially means the death of lightning ports on iPads. And weirdly, this also means that you now need an adapter to charge the Apple Pencil. Somehow that seems even sillier than the previous solution. Anyway, the 10th generation base model is also now $120 more than the 9th generation iPad, which is like a full 30% price jump, so ouch. But at least all the new models are up for grabs now, and I've also left some pretty good deals to 2021 iPad models in the description as well. Then in more sort of Apple news this week, Humane, the secretive startup of former Apple employees, came out and said that the rumors are true, the smartphone is dead, hinting that coming next year, the world's first device built from the ground up by AI by Humane will replace the phone. Okay. Next up, Meta this week finally conceded defeat to regulators and will be forced to sell Giphy, even though Giphy once said that only Meta would buy it because of a general waning of user and content partner interest in GIFs, and that young users describe GIFs as, quote, for boomers and, quote, cringe. Well, I think deprecating your own company before court just to avoid getting regulated the hell out of, I think is, wait for it, cringe. Anyway, this week also brought us yet another new USB-C spec, USB 4 version 2.0. That's right, there are two different version numbers in one spec name. Anyway, the new spec can hit data transfer rates of 120 gigabits per second across 3.2 lanes, mostly for extreme display needs, and it's coming to new products in about 12 to 18 months, while Intel has also just released a new spec of Thunderbolt 2, which now functionally does almost the same thing as regular USB-C, just with a less confusing naming scheme. And the weirdest thing this week was Nothing's Carl Pei announcing that the original Ear 1 earbuds will actually be $50 more expensive next week. That's something. The original $99 price jumps to $149, with Pei tweeting that that's because they hired engineers and put out 15 firmware updates. Of all the things that make no sense at all, this is way up there. Okay, that's it for the brief. Links to all the newly announced products as well as those iPad deals will be down in the description, and my first story of the week will actually be about phone makers becoming more and more car makers as well. First, this week, Foxconn unveiled two new electric vehicles. These are not actually supposed to be sold under its own badge, but rather reference models to be shown to brands whose cars Foxconn actually wants to build as the contract manufacturer, same as they build iPhones for Apple and similar products for other competitors. There are 3 prototype models coming out of Foxconn now, and the company aims to, quote, slash EV development costs by a third and to make design times 50% shorter for clients. Second, Xiaomi's founder Lei Jun said this week exactly that on Twitter, claiming that EVs are becoming consumer electronics basically, and that because of that, the world's top 5 brands will hold more than 80% of the market share when the EV industry reaches maturity, just like they do with phones now. And third, Sony and Honda also recently announced collaborating on their EV to bring to market by 2025 as well. Apparently, Honda is focusing on automated driver assist technology, while Sony will provide the metaverse-related entertainment. Metaverse-related entertainment. That sounds like a winning strategy. Good for you, Sony. Okay, my second story of the week is a new report claiming that Android is in trouble and that Google is responding to that by doubling down on Pixel. So this news comes from The Information, which says that Google is especially worried about how Samsung keeps losing market share in mature markets like the US to Apple, and that a new hardware handbook is needed. Specifically, Counterpoint data shows that iOS has overtaken Android for the first time ever in the US by install base, and it also shows iPhone being on a steady increase in the US over the last few years, with similar increases in other rich markets as well. Samsung doesn't appear to be losing market share overall globally. In fact, it fared a little bit better than many of its other Android competitors, said Canalys this week, and their foldables are of course doing surprisingly well too, but without the Galaxy Note series and the S series doing kind of just medium at best, Apple seems to be taking much more of the premium market for itself, which in turn got Google worried. The Information says that it saw internal Google documents which show that the company is moving resources away from third-party projects and over to their own Google-branded devices as a result. Basically, Google seems to be saying, screw it, our partners like Samsung are actually losing on the high end, they can't seem to be able to beat Apple on their own, so we're just gonna throw our money at this and try for ourselves. Google has actually singled out Samsung, Xiaomi, and OnePlus as the 3 brands that it will give extra support to going forward still, while they have cut other brands off as lower priority, so I guess those brands will have it even harder than Samsung. And beside phones, Google is apparently also reprioritizing its efforts around its own watch and upcoming tablet, for which they appear to be ready to deprioritize less important projects like Google TV. In this light, Google doubling the production of the Pixel 7 versus the 6 and kind of really keeping the prices aggressive and low makes even more sense. They feel the squeeze and they feel like they really have to perform. Okay, and for my third story of the week, Qualcomm and Microsoft seem to be preparing for a bit of a weird Android handheld gaming revolution, and I have some questions. So you might have heard of Razer announcing its Razer Edge game console this week, a $400 Nintendo Switch/Steam Deck lookalike that runs Android and is powered by the Qualcomm Snapdragon G3x Gen 1 chip, a chip that Qualcomm specifically announced for this form factor about a year ago. This device joins Logitech's G Cloud device, and both of them can either play Android games natively or they can stream stuff from the cloud. So Qualcomm seems to be pushing this form factor with a dedicated chip, even if that chip isn't like a super impressive one, it's kind of just a repackaged 8 series from like a year or two ago, but still, it's a dedicated chip, and Microsoft seems to be pushing it as well. This week, it was revealed in documents that Microsoft is building an Xbox mobile game store to take on Apple and Google. In a document supporting Microsoft's Activision Blizzard purchase, the company wrote, quote, "The transaction will improve Microsoft's ability to create a next-generation game store, and Xbox will seek to scale the Xbox Store to mobile, attracting gamers to a new Xbox mobile platform." So Microsoft is saying that the regulators need to allow them to buy Activision Blizzard so they then can take that IP and can try to compete against, for example, the Google Play Store by launching their own mobile app store. Sounds interesting. It could just be a smart lie, of course, though it's not inconceivable that, say, Call of Duty and Candy Crush could encourage gamers to install an Xbox Store app with even more games. We have seen Epic trying this with Epic Games and its Store app, which has burned boatloads of cash trying and mostly failing to do something similar, and I'm not entirely sure that an alternative game store is even realistic on Android, but at least Microsoft could also tie in their whole Xbox game streaming service into that app store if they ever have one, so I guess it might work. Anyway, the fact that Logitech, Razer, Qualcomm, and Microsoft all seem to be pushing this form factor on Android is interesting to say the least, even though the fact that these two handheld gaming devices are both kind of meh doesn't really help the situation. The Steam Deck and the Switch can always outcompete them on money because their hardware is subsidized by game sales, which might be difficult to compete against on Android, but you know, who knows. Game streaming without a super steady connection can still be pretty iffy, so betting a whole strategy on that sounds a little bit risky, but if a super steady connection is what you're after, then check out my sponsor, NordVPN. NordVPN is the fastest VPN around, faster than all of its major competitors according to independent speed tests, to the point where I basically can't notice it being on at all. Of course, like any good VPN, you can use it for unlocking geo-blocked sites for internet freedom, you can watch TV shows or sports from abroad, etc. using one of their 5,400 servers in 59 countries, and NordVPN is super secure with a clear no-logs policy, super strong encryption, and a bunch of extra nerdy security options if you want more. Of course, you can install NordVPN on any of your phones, computers, or even your router to cover your whole home network, with up to 6 devices covered under their standard plans, and those plans are extremely affordable. At nordvpn.com/Friday checkout, you can not only get a massive discount of their 2-year plan, but also 4 extra months for free, and there's also a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you don't like it, there's basically no risk in there at all. So check it out, get VPNing, and I'll see you next Friday.